At 4:18, on an April Saturday under chandeliers at Eternal Gardens in Newport Beach, my daughter's fiancé, Jasper Hale, leaned over my chair and sneered, "Your place is on the floor." By Memorial Day, May the 26th, I was days away from losing control of an 84-foot yacht and an 8-figure portfolio worth about $18.7 million. I am Dr. Lylan Nguyen, 68, a retired cardiothoracic surgeon and Navy Reserve veteran, and they were certain their plan was airtight. If you have ever been blindsided by family greed, drop your city in the comments and subscribe for the twist, because what happened next turned a wedding into a reckoning. Right beside my plate sat 3 quiet clues. A manila envelope packed with certified records, a brass key tagged DocBox B7, and a certified copy of a durable power of attorney I carry on counsel's advice. I did not know it yet, but those 3 items would keep me on my feet when someone tried to put me on the floor. I did not become careful by accident. I became careful one holiday at a time, one missed birthday at a time, one shift that ran through sunrise at a time. Before I ever held a portfolio, I held open chests and asked frightened hearts to find their rhythm again. I am a mother because I chose to be steady. I'm wealthy because I chose to be quiet. After my late wife Maria died, the house felt too large for the 2 of us, so I filled the extra rooms with structure. Lists on the fridge, school forms filed the day they came home, tuition paid on time and in full. I counted the real costs the way surgeons count sponges. 2 Christmases spent in scrubs while the city slept. 4 Thanksgivings reheated on a Monday because a life needed saving on a Thursday. Summer intensives that cost $10,000 here, a studio semester that cost $47,000 there. A graduation trip I covered because I wanted my daughter to see a world larger than a zip code. Looking back now, I see the ledger clearly. The mortgage on the Newport place paid down early because I hate owing anyone. The yacht purchased not for show but for salt air and quiet mornings, documented and insured under a company that lived inside a trust, because a good plan makes fewer mistakes. Shares of Apple bought when people were bored of it. Shares of Tesla when the jokes were louder than the cars. Shares of Nvidia when the name still sounded like a lab project. A classic car that sat in the garage until Sundays when the light was right. Month after month, year after year, I moved money like I move instruments in an operating room, precise and without applause. That is how you build $18.7 million without teaching the world to stare. Then Vivian brought Jasper home. The first dinner was small. Pasta, a bright salad, and peach pie because Maria loved it, and I still bake it on good days. He walked in with the air of someone evaluating a listing. He complimented the countertops and asked their year like he was checking comps. He poured me wine without asking and explained tannins as if I had never measured anything more complex than sugar. He called my routines old school and smiled like it was praise. Looking back now, the contrast was already on the table. Vivian talked about late nights sketching and client calls that stretched past dinner. She has always been the kind who earns what she touches. Jasper talked about access, the executive lounge, the client tier that gets the chef's table, the company card he used before he learned the cost of interest. He wore the polish of a golden child. In his family, doors opened because his last name arrived first. In my life, doors opened because a patient needed me to walk through them. He liked to play with labels. He framed Vivian as a woman who had outgrown her old story. He framed me as sweet, trusting, and a little sentimental. He used the word tradition when what he meant was control. At Fashion Island, he slid a 4-figure check across the table with a theatrical flourish and said the bride's parent pays. I signed, not because he was right, but because dignity matters more than a receipt. There were small tells I logged without making a scene. He called Brooklyn a phase you grow out of as if neighborhoods were shoes. He asked too many questions about my schedule, and when I took my medication couched in concern, wrapped in phrases like, "Let me help," and "You do so much already." He admired the yacht and asked casually whether the documents were kept aboard or in a dock box. He noticed the brass key on my ring and turned it in his fingers like a prop. I took it back with a smile. Looking back now, I can name the 3 moments that should have rung louder. First, the way he talked about money as theater. At a birthday dinner for Vivian, he ordered champagne I would have reserved for a transplant success and narrated the label out loud. He did the same with people. He narrated them. A family friend who lost a job became in his story a cautionary tale about not seizing the market. He told that story within earshot of the friend. Second, the way he collected passwords by pretending to simplify. He offered to set up my phone for facial ID and to consolidate my medical portals. I thanked him and declined. He joked that I was paranoid. I said a little paranoia keeps you alive. Third, the way he rehearsed public moments. He asked about the ceremony seating chart as if it were a chessboard. He smiled at the idea of surprises. He laughed at old-fashioned vows. He did not laugh with warmth. I kept my own ledger, a file box in the study with every tuition bill stamped paid, receipts for braces, recital dresses, design software licenses, and 100 small things that make a life. A manila envelope prepped by my attorney Sam with certified copies of the trust, and an amendment Maria and I had added after we saw a neighbor nearly lose her home to a nephew's ambition. A certified durable power of attorney that I carry, because Sam once said, keep it near the medical folder, it will save hours when seconds matter. And a brass key tagged DocBox B7 because documents belong where the law expects to find them. On the other side of the ledger sat Jasper's family. His father, Saul Hale, a retired Marine officer with a spine that still saluted when he walked. His Aunt Nancy, soft-spoken and observant. The more I watched, the clearer the split became. Saul respected quiet competence. Nancy noticed when people flinched. Jasper performed competence and missed the flinches entirely. He started testing thresholds. At a tasting with the florist, he joked about my hearing. When I did not react, he pushed a little harder the next week at a caterer's table, making a crack about older hands being unsteady. Each time I chose restraint because you learn as a surgeon and as a parent that the first reaction is rarely the most effective one. I documented instead. Dates, words. The way Vivian's smile dimmed a degree when he aimed for the easy laugh. Looking back now, I understand why the insult under the chandeliers felt less like a shock and more like a final reveal. People tell you who they are. They do it in small ways first, where they place the check, how they treat the waiter, whether they ask your permission before they hold your pill organizer and try to be helpful. The sacrifice part of my story is simple. I gave time, money, and focus so my daughter would stand on steady ground. The golden child part of his story is simple too. He took access for granted and mistook that ease for merit. When those two stories collided, the room went quiet enough for the truth to speak. So before we get to the receipts and the recordings, you need to see the stage as it really was. A mother who keeps her promises, a daughter who tries to believe the best, a fiancé who enjoys the optics more than the substance, and a family on his side that is not all the same, which will matter later when boots cross marble and a voice from another year asks a question that changes everything. The first crack did not look like a crack. It looked like a friendly alert on my phone from Chase. A small transfer I did not recognize. $25. Then $30 the next morning. Pennies if you measure in yachts and houses. Red flags if you measure in patterns. I opened the app, checked devices, and saw a new login attempt that failed tied to a phone I do not own. I changed every password and wrote down the exact times. The manila envelope on my kitchen table swallowed the printouts. Remember the envelope. 2 nights later, the doorbell camera lit my porch at 1:13 in the morning. The rehearsal dinner had ended hours before. Jasper texted that he would swing by to drop off vitamins for my blood pressure and pick up the seating chart I had adjusted. He stayed on the porch with his groomsmen voices low, unaware that low is not silent. The ring microphone caught the whisper. We pull the chair under the lights, make it playful, make it viral. The bride's parent pays on the floor. I saved the clip. I saved the transcript. I saved the still frame with his hand sketching an invisible yank in the air. I backed everything up twice. Cloud and drive. This is what habit looks like when it becomes a shield. The next breadcrumb drifted in on a weekday afternoon. I stopped by Vivian's place with peonies and coffee before her vendor Zoom. She ran down to the lobby to grab a package and left the laptop open. Voices kept talking. Someone on Jasper's team joked about drafting a prenup that reads like a term sheet. Then Jasper's voice slid in cold and efficient. She is a simple woman, sweet, trusting. We isolate her. We present a capacity evaluation. We get a durable power of attorney signed. If she hesitates, we switch the beta blocker. Mild confusion sells the story. We are protecting her. I did not touch the keyboard. I did not announce myself. I stood in the kitchen and counted to 10 the way I used to count while a heart found its beat again. Back at home, I checked my pill organizer. One blister in the beta blocker strip was a half shade off. Most people would never see it. Nurses do. I called Callie from the ICU and asked her to come over. She arrived with a tote and a face that means business. We photographed the pack under the same light from 3 angles with a ruler for scale. We pulled the refill dates from the pharmacy portal. No authorized change, no dose adjustment, and a refill timeline that did not match the math. Callie documented chain of custody and logged the lot number. We printed the screenshots and tucked them behind the bank logs. Evidence is a story that tells itself when you let it. The bank alerts kept tapping. A $2,000 transfer labeled MyEsk retainer. A $5,000 debit tagged expedited fee. Then a blocked wire I did not attempt. I asked the bank for a device report and a transaction trace. The paper came back with a neat list of drips. Over 14 months, exactly $243,780 had been siphoned through small authorizations and short-lived links, all pointing toward fee accounts that do not belong to me. I ran my finger along the dates and saw a pattern. Charges clustered around holidays and hospital anniversaries, the days when I would be most distracted. Whoever did this understood my calendar. That thought turned my stomach more than any number on the page. Then the courier dropped an envelope that answered the part I did not want answered. Inside sat 3 forms with my name and a signature that looked almost like mine. The R in Nguyen was too round. The loop in the L was too eager. I pulled a stack of old hospital HR forms and laid them side by side. Muscle memory is hard to fake. I took photos of the overlays and sent them to Sam with a single line. "This is not me." He called back immediately. "Keep everything. Do not confront him yet. We will move when we are ready." I wanted to pretend the next piece would soften the blow. It did not. Vivian came by with groceries and the look she wears when she has a confession. She had signed a florist release last week, she said. Jasper shoved it across the table between menu tastings and said the venue needed it. She did not read past the header. She trusted. When I asked for the copy, the notary page was missing. She went very still when I explained why that mattered. Complicity can be innocent and still be complicity. I held her hand. We sat that way for a while without speaking. Breadcrumb by breadcrumb, suspicion hardened into certainty. The small transfers were not random. The Zoom banter was not a joke. The off-shade pill was not a manufacturer's quirk. The forged signature was not a close call. And the plan to yank a chair at a wedding was not a prank. It was a rehearsal for control. I built a 3-stack binder on the dining table. Financial flows with device logs and dates spelled out. Medical records with refilled timelines and Callie's affidavit. Legal documents with signature overlays and courier receipts. I added a tab for digital evidence. The ring clip time stamped 1:13 in the morning and the audio file from the open laptop, each with a chain of custody note. On the inside cover, I slipped the certified durable power of attorney and a fresh letter of revocation, drafted but not yet served. On the back pocket, I placed the brass key to Doc Box B7, a reminder that the yacht documentation already lived under the protection of a trust and a company assignment designed for exactly this kind of moment. I will explain that assignment in a second. For now, know this: I did not raise my voice. I did not beg. I stacked proof until the weight could stand up on its own. When I finally told Vivian what I had, I watched her work through it like a designer facing a bad brief. She started with denial, slid to anger, and ended in clarity. She asked the question that matters most. "What do we do first?" "We breathe," I said. "Then we call Sam. Then we move quietly and in order. Surface first. The instant I reach for the chair with my name card, wood skates across marble and the floor rises to meet me. I do not flail. I brace. Laughter bubbles where manners should live. Jasper leans in, voice low and sharp, and says, "Your place is on the floor." I feel the chill of stone through silk, and then a hush that sounds like a room remembering itself. I stand the way you stand after a long surgery, slow and steady, and set the chair upright with a scrape that cuts the music clean. I do not look at him. I look at my daughter. Her bouquet tilts. Her breath catches. Behind us, the chandeliers glitter as if nothing has happened, which is exactly why this matters. Then, the boots. Not polished dress shoes, boots that know briefing rooms and tarmac. They cross the marble in even beats. A man in his early 70s steps into the light gray at the temple's shoulders still square. He takes in the scene, sees his son with a hand on a chair and me on my feet again, and the color drains from his face. His voice breaks and then finds itself. Dr. Nguyen, is that you? Saul Hale, 2004, a field tent outside Fallujah, a generator that coughed between breaths, a monitor that lied, a chest opened fast and a heart persuaded to keep going. He promised back then he would not forget. Marines keep promises. Conspiracy next. You can feel a plan when it is not just a prank. I open the manila envelope. The clasp hisses like steam. Paper breathes its dry courthouse smell. I lay a single certified copy of my durable power of attorney on the linen and say nothing. I do not accuse. I exhibit. The DJ glances at me. I nod once. He has the flash drive I tucked inside the envelope. The screen above the band wakes up. 30 seconds. No commentary, only receipts. A still frame from the ring at 1:13 in the morning, Jasper on my porch, sketching the yank in the air while he tells a groomsman to make it viral and to say tradition the bride's parent pays. A waveform of the Zoom audio where he calls me sweet and trusting and outlines a capacity play if I hesitate. A close shot of the beta blocker blister that is one shade off, followed by pharmacy refill dates that do not line up. A signature overlay that shows my real loop and the round one that is not mine. Each image lands. Each image is labeled. Each image has a timestamp. Faces change when truth stops asking for permission. The groomsman who stood on my porch looks at his shoes. A cousin goes very still. Nancy, the aunt who notices everything, rises and says enough, her voice calm and clear. She does not defend. She confirms. She tells the room she heard the rehearsal talk. She tells the room she warned him to stop. You cannot control what you do not respect, she says, and sits down again. Timeline last. I speak once for as long as it takes to place the pattern on the table. Over 14 months, exactly $243,780, moved in small drips through fake retainer labels tied to devices that do not belong to me. 2 weeks ago, a courier delivered 3 forms with a signature that imitates my hand, but not my muscle memory. 2 nights ago, a porch camera recorded a plan to yank a chair for laughs. Yesterday, a Zoom window captured the line that made my stomach turn. She is a simple woman. Sweet. Trusting. We isolate her. Today, under these chandeliers, the joke arrived on schedule. The only thing that did not go to plan was the part where a Marine's boots walked in and remembered a promise. I do not explain the yacht assignment in detail here, but I will tell you this. Years ago, on Sam's advice, the United States Coast Guard documentation and bill of sale placed that vessel inside a limited liability company controlled by my trust. A quiet clause says, if anyone attempts to isolate or exploit me, my control tightens instantly. Documents can be a kind of armor when they are drafted in daylight. The room holds its breath. Saul takes the microphone the band forgot to put away. He is not a man who speaks much, which is why every word lands. This woman kept me alive in 2004, he says, and I failed to teach my son what honor looks like. A murmur moves through 200 guests. It does not sound like gossip. It sounds like a verdict. Jasper starts a speech he cannot finish. He says nervous. He says prank. He says love. The screen still shows his hand tracing the pull in the air at 1:13 in the morning. You cannot argue with your own outline. I pull the durable power back into the envelope and press the clasp flat. The brass key in my pocket is warm from my hand. Everything that matters is already in motion. We will not shout tonight. We will move in order tomorrow. Remember the envelope. The morning after the reception, I did what I always do before hard work. I opened the blinds, brewed coffee strong enough to stand a spoon, and laid the binder on the table. Calm is not hesitation. Calm is a plan you can execute when your hands stop shaking. At 8, I called Sam, my elder law attorney. By mid-morning, we were sitting in his orange office with the binder open to 3 tabs: money, medicine, and signatures. He reviewed every page, then slid in a 4th tab labeled digital. Behind it, we placed the ring transcript time-stamped 1:13 in the morning, the Zoom audio with that sentence about isolating me, and still frames of the off-shade tablet beside the pharmacy refill dates. He read in silence the way a surgeon reads a scan. When he finished, he said, "We move today. We move." We filed an emergency petition in Orange County Probate Court requesting 3 things. First, immediate suspension and revocation of any power of attorney instruments obtained by fraud or undue influence. Second, a temporary restraining order limiting contact and prohibiting Jasper from accessing my accounts, devices, or premises. Third, an order for evidence preservation and an accounting. We attached declarations, Callie's sworn affidavit on the medication tampering bank device logs tied to a non-registered phone, and a spreadsheet showing exactly $243,780 siphoned over 14 months. While the clerk assigned a case number, Sam placed 2 quiet calls. One to Adult Protective Services to open a file under elder financial abuse so the court would see that a state agency was aware and monitoring. One to a process server he trusts who can serve documents without drama. No shouting, paper first. Next, we moved the money out of reach. Not by hiding it, but by tightening what already existed. Years earlier, on Sam's advice, the yacht's United States Coast Guard Certificate of Documentation and Bill of Sale placed the vessel inside a limited liability company owned by my revocable trust. That morning, we sent written notices to the marina and to the insurer, placing fraud alerts on any request to change insureds or lien holders. Title and control remain with the LLC under the operating agreement. That is silent power move number 1. A boat he loved to pose on cannot be moved without tripping agreements he does not control. Silent power move number 2 was as old-fashioned as it was effective. We served the emergency petition by noon and hand-delivered courtesy copies to the legal departments at Chase and Fidelity. We served courtesy copies with the court-stamped petition to the legal teams at Chase and Fidelity, requesting enhanced verification on any account where Jasper was listed as a trusted contact, or where device fingerprints matched the failed logins. Banks are conservative. Within hours of receipt, they flagged and held the suspect fee routes pending the court's direction. We also updated my trusted contact to Sam and removed anyone else who did not need to be there. Silent power move number 3 traveled by email. Sam drafted a factual notice to Jasper's firm's compliance office and to the industry regulator's tips channel. No adjectives, only dates, totals, and the existence of a court case alleging elder financial abuse and medication tampering. Attached were the public versions of the filings and a short cover letter asking that they preserve internal messages and client communications. Reputation moves slowly, and then all at once when compliance hits send. Maya arrived just after lunch. Sam introduced her as a forensic accountant who speaks fluent bank. She built a flowchart across his conference table in colored lines: green for legitimate expenses, orange for suspicious transfers, red for confirmed siphons. She traced the drips to 2 fee accounts that exist only on paper and to a limited liability company in Delaware with initials that matched Jasper's former employer. "Follow the ink," she said, and printed a summary that any judge could read in a minute. By late afternoon, we had a hearing date for the temporary orders. We would not wait long. Probate moves faster than people think when an elder's safety is on the line. I texted Vivian to meet us at Sam's office. When she arrived, pale but steady, Sam spoke directly to her. "Your mother is competent, and she is in control of her estate. You were drawn into a scheme. The most protective thing you can do now is follow this plan without deviation." She nodded, eyes glassy but clear. She signed a declaration stating that any signatures she provided at Jasper's request were made without full information. Then she asked the question I needed her to ask. "What do I change today?" We changed everything that invites casual intrusion. We removed autofill from her shared laptop and reset every password with a passphrase she chose and memorized. We turned on 2-factor authentication and pointed the codes to a new number. We changed the locks at her apartment and left a note with building security to deny key fobs to anyone not on her list. We moved her sentimental valuables, the kind money cannot replace, into my house temporarily. We placed a simple no-contact letter on Sam's letterhead, instructing Jasper to route any communication through counsel. If he ignored it, the restraining order would become easier to argue. At sunset, I took the brass key tagged Docbox B7 and drove to the marina. The air smelled like salt and diesel, a scent that has always calmed me. I unlocked the dock box and checked the vessel file, the certificate of documentation, the insurance binder, the operating agreement for the limited liability company, and the trust certification. Everything was where it belonged. I added a copy of the morning's notice and closed the lid. The sound of the latch settling felt like a heartbeat falling back into rhythm. Back home, I spread the day's receipts across my dining table, the way I used to spread scans before a complex case. Petition filed, service complete, bank notices delivered, compliance notices sent, hearing date set. A planned narrative becomes persuasive when it can stand on paper without me in the room. That night, my phone buzzed with the first confirmations. The bank flagged the suspicious retainer accounts and placed holds pending the court's direction. The marina logged the fraud alert on any attempted vessel transfer. The court docket showed our hearing scheduled within days, not weeks. I stood at the sink, washed my coffee mug, and felt the kind of tired that comes after a long surgery, the kind that tells you things are finally moving in the right direction. We did not post online. We did not grandstand. We built a record. In the morning, we would carry that record into a courtroom and let the law do what it was written to do. Justice is a system. You respect it by showing up prepared. The courtroom did not look dramatic. Fluorescent lights, tan walls, a clock that ticked too loudly. Sam set our binder on counsel's table and rested his hand on it the way I used to rest a palm on a patient's shoulder before anesthesia. Calm is not performance. Calm is preparation breathing on paper. The judge scanned the filings, asked 3 questions, and listened longer than most people listen in their entire lives. We did not argue feelings. We walked the court through sequence and proof. Device logs first, transactions next, the ring clip time-stamped 1:13 in the morning, the Zoom audio with the line about isolating me, pharmacy refills that did not match math, Callie's sworn statement that the pill blister shade was off, Maya's flowchart showing small drips that added up to exactly $243,780 over 14 months. The judge nods once and rules. Temporary restraining order granted. Any power of attorney instrument tied to me and procured by fraud or undue influence is suspended and revoked pending further hearing. Jasper is prohibited from accessing my accounts devices or property directly or through others. The court orders a full accounting and preservation of evidence, including phones, laptops, and cloud backups. The court also orders a provisional escrow equal to the alleged loss, $243,780 pending the accounting. Statutory double damages for bad faith taking are reserved for the next hearing, $487,560 plus attorney fees and costs to be determined. The judge cited California elder abuse statutes by name and looked at me with a small kindness that does not show up in transcripts. At the follow-up hearing, after the accounting landed in the record and Maya's flows were admitted, the court entered restitution and doubled damages under probate law for bad faith, taking $487,560 plus fees and costs to be set on a later calendar. We served the order before we walked out of the building. Paper moves faster than rumor when you put it in the right hands. The bank's enhanced verification kicked in by afternoon. The suspicious fee accounts were placed on hold pending the court's direction. The Marina and the United States Coast Guard Documentation Office logged our fraud alerts on any attempted vessel transfer. The insurer added notes to the policy so that a change in named insured would flag and stall. Compliance moved too. Sam's factual notice to Jasper's firm reached the right inboxes. By evening, the firm issued a suspension pending investigation. A formal U5 termination update would follow if the suspension became permanent. The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority opened an inquiry and requested preservation of internal messages, client communications, and any disclosures related to my name. No adjectives were needed. Dates and documents speak fluent consequence. I did not post a victory note. I did not take a photo on the courthouse steps. The only public words attached to my name were the ones in the filing and a measured statement: protect your elders, review your pill packs, watch your bank alerts. The HOA Facebook group shared the ring clip with faces blurred. Next door lit up with neighbors posting their own checklists. I answered 2 messages that asked for my attorney's name and then closed the app. Jasper tried a faster route. A bouquet and a letter arrived by courier earlier that day before the order was served. After service, any outreach had to go through counsel. When another bouquet appeared later, we documented it as a violation and Sam notified the court. My reply did not change. Any communication goes through attorneys. Dignity is not a negotiation. I kept my refusal as clean as the paper we filed. Any communication will go through counsel. Any meeting will wait for the court to finish. Love does not look like forged signatures and siphoned money. Dignity is not a negotiation. Saul called once, voice steady and low. He said he was sorry to me and to his son in the same breath. He did not ask me to stand down. He asked what work he could do that would matter. I told him the scholarship I was building in Maria's name would need mentors for nursing students who come from military families. He said yes before I finished. A separate referral moved on its own track. Adult Protective Services had notified the district attorney's office about the medication tampering. After 2 interviews and a review of Callie's chain of custody notes, the office offered a diversion agreement restitution in the civil case, a no-contact order with me for 1 year, and 400 hours of community service with a veterans boating nonprofit and marina cleanup days. He signed it. A vest that read, "Volunteer does not fix a heart, but it teaches hands how to work without applause." Vivian stepped into the light the way people do when they decide to stop defending what hurts them. She met with the firm's HR. She gave a straightforward statement. She took an unpaid leave to clear her head and moved her essentials into my guest room for a short while. She designed a waiting room for the Veterans Center in Costa Mesa pro bono. She did not write a caption about it. She just showed up with a tape measure and a notepad and did what she knows how to do. The hearing for preliminary orders came quickly. The judge kept the restraining order in place and set a case management date to finalize fees and the schedule for the accounting. The court also ordered Jasper to return any devices or keys belonging to me and to certify under oath that no copies remained. That part matters. People forget that keys can be digital. Certifications make lying expensive. By the time the sun went down that week, the house was quiet again. No tense phone calls, no sudden knocks. The yacht rocked against its lines as if it had a heartbeat of its own. The dock box held a neat file documentation, insurance operating agreement, trust certification, and the court order. The portfolio sat where it belonged, monitored, not moved. My calendar had space for simple things: a walk, a call to a friend, a pot of tea that could steep as long as it wanted. Justice did not feel like fireworks. It felt like breath returning after being held too long. It felt like a pen scratching across paper as a clerk stamps a seal. It felt like a volunteer vest on the shoulders of a man who once considered humiliation entertainment. It felt like my daughter setting her own keys on my kitchen counter and saying, "I'm staying here tonight." So yes, there were public consequences, frozen accounts, a suspension pending investigation, a regulator letter with a case number, a letter of apology folded inside thick paper, a community service schedule printed in black and white. But the real consequence was quieter. Control returned to where it belonged. The story shifted from spectacle to order. Tomorrow we would close the loop with one more filing and a careful update to the trust. Tonight I rinsed 2 mugs, turned off the porch light, and listened to the ordinary hum of a safe house. Peace is not loud, it is consistent. 6 months later, the marina smells like eucalyptus and salt. The yacht nudges its lines like it has its own pulse. The dock box labeled B7 holds what it should hold: the vessel file, the insurance binder, the operating agreement for the company that owns the boat, the trust certification, and a copy of the court order. I lift the lid, check the stack, and close it with the same care I once used to close a chest. Order is a kind of peace. Life did not explode into fireworks after court. It settled. The first restitution payments posted. The no-contact order did its quiet work. The suspension at Jasper's firm remained in place while the regulator's inquiry moved at the pace of paperwork and preservation. He clocked hours in a volunteer vest scrubbing decks for a veterans boating nonprofit and hauling trash bags at marina cleanups. I saw him once at a distance, shoulders bent not from weight but from recognition. I did not wave. Accountability does not require my gaze. Saul kept his word. He showed up at the Veterans Center every other week not to talk about honor, but to demonstrate it. He sat with nursing students over coffee and told them the truth about what fear does to good men and how gratitude is a verb. He asked for nothing in return. When the Maria Fund announced its first 3 scholarships for nurses from military families, he sat in the back row and clapped like he was in church. Vivian chose her ground and held it. She kept her lease but stayed with me for a while until quiet felt normal again. She returned to work on her terms after an unpaid leave and set boundaries that did not ask permission. No shared passwords, no blurred lines between work and home, no second chances for disrespect. On Saturdays, she still drove to Costa Mesa with a tape measure and a notepad and finished that pro bono redesign for the Veterans Center. She did not post about it. She watched the waiting room fill with calm and called that enough. I made one purchase for joy. An Airstream with clean lines and a soft glow at dusk. On long weekends, I tow it up the coast and park where the night sounds like water and wind. Callie brings cinnamon rolls that taste like holidays we missed when I was on call. Sam shows up once with a folding chair and teases me about finally learning to rest. Maya arrives with a road atlas and underlines diners we should try. We sit under a small awning and talk about everything but the case. This is what a chosen family looks like. A nurse, a lawyer, a forensic accountant, a daughter who learned to trust her eyes, and a Marine who learned how to apologize in actions. I still carry the manila envelope when I travel, not because I am afraid, but because it reminds me that paper is a tool, not a weapon. I still keep the brass key in my pocket, not because I expect a storm, but because I respect the ocean. The durable power of attorney sits in the medical folder where Sam told me to keep it years ago. Prepared is not paranoid. Prepared is kind to your future self. Boundaries outrank blood. I say that without bitterness. Love that refuses to honor boundaries is not love. It is appetite. The day I stood up from that marble floor and set my chair back where it belonged, I drew a line I will not erase. I will welcome anyone who meets me with respect. I will not bargain with people who turn jokes into cruelty and plans into traps. People ask if I forgave him. Forgiveness is not a door he walks through to get back into our lives. Forgiveness is a door I walk through so I do not carry his choices like an extra rib. He carries his hours and his letters and his distance. I carry my daughter's laughter coming back a little more each week. When I tow the Airstream north, I stop at a pullout where the horizon looks wide enough to hold a second chance. I pour coffee lean on the fender and let the ocean do its slow work. I think about 2004, about a field tent, and a man who promised not to forget. I think about the April afternoon when boots crossed marble and kept that promise. I think about the day the court stamped a seal and handed me back the parts of my life that someone tried to sign away. I do not need an audience for any of that. I need the people I love to be safe. If you were me, would you have pressed charges or kept it in civil court? Tell me in the comments. If you have an elder you love, check their pill pack, skim their bank alerts, and ask if anyone has been extra helpful lately. Help is a costume Control likes to wear. Subscribe and tap notify if you want stories where the twist is not rage but order, not shouting but proof. The chair was the beginning. The breath I took before I stood up was the real turn. Story 2. I rubbed my thumb along the frayed tassel of a scarf my grandmother knitted the wool soft as a sigh. The funeral home smells like lemon cleaner and fake orchids. I tell myself to breathe and count the light bulbs in the chandelier. 10, 11, 12. Then my mother lifts her phone and angles her face toward the casket. Move the flowers, she whispers to the director. They make my eyes look puffy. Ordinary grief turns theatrical in a snap. My father is already by the door, arguing about processing fees. My younger brother plays a game on silent jaw, working gum. I decide not to interrupt, not to scold, not to explain what Nora Blake actually valued. I decide to listen. It's the smallest decision I make today. It ends up saving me. I'm Mara Quinn, 30, middle school counselor. I solve other people's crises for a living. I didn't plan for my own to start under a chandelier that hums like a beehive. People file past whispering the phrases you're supposed to say. My mother Camilla dabs at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief and returns to the restroom every 10 minutes. She emerges fresh-lashed and photo-ready. My father Philip tells an aunt. The timing is complicated, like my grandmother picked a bad quarter to stop breathing. Jasper, 27, doesn't look up once. His crypto chart climbs and crashes in his glasses. I escape to a corner chair and run the scarf across my knuckles until the skin warms. Memory pulls me backward. Cinnamon toast at dawn in a kitchen with a squeaky fan. My grandfather Henry teaching me to grease the fittings on his first box truck. Know how to fix things, he'd say. Buying new is the lazy man's religion. He'd laugh when the wrench slipped and my hands went black with grease. Now you look like you belong. When the service ends, we migrate like a flock to the attorney's office. Wood paneling, books no one reads. The clock ticks loud enough to pass for a metronome. Ruth Calder, the family lawyer, stands when we enter. Thank you for coming, she says, voice steady, eyes kind. My mother occupies the central chair and widens her posture like a queen bracing for a portrait. Philip stations himself behind her hand on the chair back. Jasper chooses the seat nearest the outlet. All right, Ruth lays a thick packet on the desk. This is the last will and testament of Nora and Henry Blake. I'm required to read it in full. The first pages are formalities that slide by like rain on glass. Then Ruth's tone shifts. The residue of our estate, inclusive of all real and personal property and business interests, appraised at approximately $32.4 million, shall pass to our granddaughter, Mara Elaine Quinn. The room goes silent, then the storm. You mean entrust, my father says, jaw tight. That can't be right, Camilla murmurs, color draining under her foundation. Nora would never do something so divisive. Jasper finally looks up. What did you do? His voice is flat, but the accusation lands like a slap. You worked them. You always were good at pretending. My throat burns. I didn't know, I say, and it's true, I had no idea. Ruth lifts a hand. They asked me to play something. She turns her laptop toward us. A video fills the screen, my grandparents on their porch at Harbor Point, cardigan and cap hands laced. The bay is a sheet of silver behind them. If you're watching, Henry says we're already missing you and you're already mad. Nora's smile is tired but clear. Philip, Camilla, Jasper, we love you. We also listened. We heard what you said when you thought we were napping. We watched what you did when you thought no one kept records. Mara loved us for us. That is why. The video ends. The room stays hushed, but the air feels rearranged. In the parking lot, the performance drops. Philip corners me against my car. He lowers his voice to the tone he uses to close deals. Here's what you'll do, he says. You'll sign management authority over to me tomorrow. We'll allocate you a stipend, 12%. We'll keep this civilized. Camilla adds a smile like silk over wire. Sweetheart money this size needs grown-ups. Jasper steps closer, breath mint and anger. Family first, Mara. Don't forget who kept a roof over your head. I curl my fist around my keys until the teeth bite. I need time, I say, steady as I can. Philip's eyes flash. You rent in a building I own through an LLC you can't spell. Don't test me. They walk away together, a tidy wedge of entitlement. I stand there with the scarf and the wind and the knowledge that love and loyalty mean different things depending on who's talking. That night, my studio looks smaller than ever. I place the scarf on the pillow like a person and pace between the bed and the tiny kitchen. I could give it all back. I could hand everything to Philip and be poor and peaceful again. Except my grandmother didn't choose me for peace. She chose me for backbone. A hard knock rattles the door. Management, a male voice calls, emergency inspection. My phone lights, unknown number. I answer. Mara, it's Ruth, she says fast. They're trying to lock you out. It's illegal. Don't engage. Leave now and go to Harbor Point. Arturo has keys and instructions. I move like a fire alarm is going off. Backpack, toothbrush, 2 shirts, the scarf. I look once at the plant on the windowsill and leave it anyway. The hallway smells like fresh paint and trouble. Dawn drizzles on Harbor Point when I turn through the stone pillars. The house sits low and wide against the water cedar and glass, modest beside the new palaces along the bluff. When I step out, the air tastes like salt and wet pine. The door opens before I knock. Arturo Vega stands there in a navy sweater, hair silver at the temple's eyes, red from insufficient sleep. "Ms. Quinn," he says, and his voice breaks. "Welcome home." I don't correct him. Not yet. The foyer creaks under my wet shoes. Lemon oil, cinnamon ghosting the air. It smells like Sunday mornings and rule following. "Mrs. Nora told me to give you this." He holds out a brass key, old and smooth-tied with blue twine. If things went this way, he leads me to Henry's study. Sunlight lays a pale bar across the heavy desk. The bottom drawer accepts the key like it's waited a long time. Inside, a leather journal bound with ribbon edges softened by touch. A smaller envelope rests beneath it, my name in Nora's looping script. My chest tightens. Arturo leaves, closing the door with a careful click. I sink into Henry's chair. The leather remembers him. The journal opens to a neat hand and dates that run back 10 years. Philip asked again. One entry begins. A short-term bridge, he called it. I told him we were tired of bridges that cross only one way. He reminded me of Jasper's tuition. We wrote the check. I don't like who I am when I worry about money. Another entry. Camilla arrived with a decorator and a camera. They measured the dining room and photographed the silver. When I asked why, she said inspo for a party. I'm old, not soft. My stomach flips. I flip forward. Jasper said at Christmas, "When the old folks go, everything's easier." Henry laughed after he left the room. I did not. I closed the journal before the words make me cry. In the chair my grandfather warmed for half his life. I opened the envelope with my name. A small flash drive slides into my palm, and a line of text in Nora's hand waits beneath it. If they fight, press play. A quiet knock. May I? A woman enters with a tray and settles it on the side table. Graceful, compact gray hair pinned. She looks at the journal and nods. "I'm Linda Cho," she says. "Housekeeper, keeper of other things when needed." Her eyes shine. "Mrs. Nora asked me to keep copies, documents, receipts, letters." People assumed she didn't notice. She noticed everything. Why didn't she? I stop. We both know the question. Why didn't she torch the bridges while she had the match? She hoped. Linda says simply, "Hope is sticky." My phone buzzes. A text from Ruth. I filed emergency motions. Do not open the gate for anyone. Cameras are live. Cameras. I didn't know there were cameras. Linda follows my eyes to a discreet lens in the crown molding. "Installed last year," she says. "Mrs. Nora didn't tell anyone. Not even Mr. Henry. There's more you should see. But eat first." She smiles at my expression. Grief turns people to glass. Food helps. I drink tea I can actually taste and a bite of toast that reminds me I have a body. Then I plug the drive into the desktop Henry never upgraded because updates break more than they fix. A folder appears. Dated clips. Logs. A spreadsheet with names, times, items, amounts. My pulse ticks hard in my neck. I click one video at random and see my mother's hand in frame, lifting a sterling candlestick during the hour between the service and the dinner. I see Jasper checking online listings. I see my father's cuff, the one with tiny sailboats, pass in front of a painting I grew up tracing with my eyes. Evidence doesn't argue. It documents. I sit back and feel the room tilt toward a truth I can't unknow. They weren't just greedy. They were prepared. Arturo appears in the doorway again, face tight. "Two cars at the gate," he says. "Mercedes and a black SUV. They're pressing the call button. Do we answer?" I stand. The scarf is still around my neck. My hands are still shaking, but my voice lands in the room clear. "Not yet," I say. "First we gather the people who stand with us, then we press play." He nods and disappears down the hall to call Ruth. I pick up Nora's journal, turn to a fresh page, and write a single sentence: "I am not the caretaker of their greed." Outside, tires crunch on gravel at the gate. A man's voice shouts my name through the speaker, impatient and sure of himself. The cameras whir softly, capturing angles I will need. I take one more breath and set the flash drive beside the keyboard like a loaded truth. The intercom crackles like a wasp nest. My father's voice rides the static, clipped and certain. "Mara, open up. We're here for family property." I lean toward the panel but don't press the talk button yet. I look at the tiny green light on the camera feed, at the black SUV and the polished Mercedes idling outside the wrought iron entry. Camilla leans near the keypad in a funeral black sheath. Jasper paces phone in his palm like a weapon. Arturo waits by the side corridor. "Ms. Quinn." "Not yet," I say. We make our own timing. I text Ruth. They're at the gate. Her reply arrives before my phone buzzes. On my way. Do not let them in alone. A second text follows. Check the driveway cameras. Audio records now. I turn the house into a stage, lights on, curtains, open angles chosen. Linda appears with a leather binder hugged to her chest and a quiet, battle-ready face. What's that, I ask. Inventory with photos and dates, she says. Everything Mrs. Nora documented. Copies for counsel. On the wall monitor, Camilla checks her reflection in the dark glass of the keypad. She reaches for the call button again. I press talk. You can come to the front steps, I say. We'll speak there. Arturo keys the outer gate, not the inner locks. The cars roll in. Their tires hiss on damp gravel. Salt wind pushes a loose strand of hair into my mouth. I tuck it behind my ear and steady my breath. Philip leads. He wears a blazer the color of dry stone and the smile he uses to disarm boardrooms. Let's be efficient, he says, stretching out his hand for a shake he has no intention of meaning. Silver service. The lamps, a few personal items. We'll be on our way. No, I say. The word lands between us and draws a line neither of us can pretend not to see. Camilla's hand goes to her chest. Sweetheart, don't make this ugly. Ugly, I repeat, not raising my voice. Like removing candlesticks after the funeral, like calling my landlord before the flowers wilted. Color moves in Philip's jaw. Watch yourself. Every angle's watching, I say, and lift my chin toward the small dome cameras tucked under the eaves. This entire exchange is recorded. If you're here for heirlooms, you can list them in a written request. Counsel will review. Jasper tries to shoulder past me. The new perimeter system hums and a red LED wakes along the edge of the steps. He freezes, curses under his breath, steps back. From the sidewalk, a dog barks. Then a voice. Everything all right, Mara? It's Mrs. Flores from across the point sweatshirt leash, bright eyes that miss nothing. Behind her, two other neighbors, slow phones already up. Harbor. Point knows how to watch without seeming nosy, and right now I am grateful for every retired teacher and early morning runner. A sedan pulls in behind the line of luxury. Ruth emerges, trenchcoat flaring expression calm as a scalpel. Good morning, she says, walking straight to me. Ms. Quinn, are you safe? Yes. She turns to my parents without warmth. Mr. and Mrs. Quinn, Mr. Quinn the younger. Temporary protective orders were entered this morning. You'll find copies in your email and here. She hands each of them a packet motions to the process server, stepping from the passenger side. Service is complete. Philip laughs once, a sound like a door slamming. You're joking. No, Ruth says, and you're done for today. Camilla tries a soft focus tone. Ruth, we've known each other for purposes of this matter, we're strangers, Ruth says. You may leave a written list of any items you believe legally belong to you. No entry without appointment. No further direct contact with my client. Arturo steps forward with the binder. Linda comes to my other side and adds a slim folder of notarized statements. Behind Ruth, another car turns in. For a heartbeat, my stomach drops reinforcements for Philip, but the driver's door opens, and a compact woman with a steel gray bob climbs out. Diane Kwan, she says, offering her card to me first. Kwan Logistics, Henry's partner from the early days. Her eyes live in a different decade when they land on the house. He taught me how to read a fuel ledger like a love letter. Ms. Kwan, thank you for being here, Ruth says, surprise melting into relief. You got my message. Fast, Diane says, tapping her temple. Gossip's already at work. Figured you'd want friendly bodies. She lifts her hand. Two more vehicles pull in, each carrying longtime drivers in worn jackets with the old Blake Freight logo at the breast. They stand back, not imposing, exactly present. The air shifts. My parents glance at the small growing audience, calculating optics angles, exits. Be smart, Philip, Ruth says, quiet as a warning bell. This is not your ground today. He holds my gaze, searching for the girl who used to flinch. He can't find her. He turns sharp on his heel and heads for the car. Camilla lingers half a beat to say my name like a plea and a curse all at once. Jasper stares like he doesn't recognize me, or like he does and hates it. Then they go, engines flaring as if noise could reclaim power. Silence rushes in behind them. Waves slap the rocks below the bluff. A gull screams. My knees wobble once and hold. Inside, Ruth says gently, let's get doors locked and documents sorted. We move as a unit. Linda secures the alarm. Arturo checks cameras notes, license plates, logs, times. Diane sets a case file on Henry's desk like she's placing flowers at a grave. Ruth stacks our evidence and creates a timeline with small, square, sticky notes. The room changes from shrine to war room without losing its softness. Start at the beginning, Ruth says, clicking her pen. Tell us everything from the moment you left my office. I do. The parking lot cornering, the inspection at my apartment, the flash drive, the gate scene. I keep my sentences as straight as I can, and when my voice threatens to split, I grip the scarf and keep going. Good, Ruth says when I finish. Here's what we're doing next. Arturo security settings to maximum. Linda copies of that inventory to my drive. Diane, can you quiet the driver whisper network? I don't want rumors to spook clients. Already texted dispatch, Diane says. Drivers will bring receipts and keep their mouths shut unless they're telling the truth. Thank you. Ruth turns back to me. Mara will file an additional petition to lock in the house and contents. I'll also move to get those videos admitted under the exceptions we discussed. You need to prepare for a smear campaign. I swallow. They'll go public. They'll go wherever attention helps, Ruth says. We won't feed it, but we'll be ready. She's right sooner than I want her to be. By mid-afternoon, my phone lights with a screenshot from an unknown number. A new account, Save Blake Legacy. A photo of me and Nora at the farmer's market captioned with a lie about isolating elders. Comments pile up from people who never met my grandmother, but feel sure about my motives. Linda's mouth thins. Mrs. Nora predicted this. She saved things for that reason. We plug the drive back in. We watch the funeral day clips all the way through, and then we open another folder labeled in a tidy hand, Philip Requests and Receipts. Requests, not loans. The word choice feels like a needle. PDF after PDF emails. Cashier checks a spreadsheet with dates and amounts and notes, and Nora's voice said, short term for payroll. Saw new boat next week. Said Camilla had medical bills. Saw gallery opening photos. I press my palm flat on the desk to stop the shake. Diane glances up from her own stack. We also need to talk about the company, she says. The contracts, the balance sheet, the whisper that Blake Freight is a brittle old name just waiting to crack. I thought the business was sold, I say. My grandparents told me they exited. They did, Diane says. But the name travels. The story travels. There's a small distributor who still uses the brand for a seasonal run, and a community of younger owners who look to you like a North Star whether you want them to or not. A rumor about the Blakes ripples through that whole harbor. Who's pushing the rumor, Ruth asks. Diane slides over her phone. A group chat scrolls by, anonymous accounts, a few real names, and one I recognize too easily, J. Quinn Alpha. I read the messages. They make my cheeks go cold. Questions about asset fragility, succession chaos, possible distress sales. Plant enough doubt and people make your disaster for you. Jasper again, of course. We'll deal with him, Ruth says. Mara will need a public baseline statement. Calm, factual, no gasoline. Can you live with that? I nod. No interviews, no fights in comment sections. Good. And call your principal before they do. I dial. Mr. Alonso picks up on the second ring. Ms. Quinn. I've already heard chatter, he says, voice warm and grounded. Come in as usual. If anybody calls this school to stir a pot, they'll get me. When I hang up, the small tremor in my chest eases. An hour later, a courier arrives with a flat anonymous parcel. Arturo signs, hands me a thick envelope that smells faintly of toner. Inside, copies of my childhood photos with red X's drawn through faces, a stack of case notes from a fake therapist, and a typed letter warning me to do the right thing before everyone gets hurt. The last page is a printout of an email from Philip to Nora promising to shut Mara out of this for her own good if Nora didn't transfer titles. He'd probably meant that one to stay buried. Ruth slips on gloves and slides everything into evidence sleeves. Keep breathing, she says. We expected a scare tactic. Fear only works if we decorate it. Evening pulls long light across the water, and the house settles into a low hum. The scar in the day begins to clot. Arturo brews coffee for the table. Linda portion cuts a lemon loaf she claims isn't fancy enough for company, which means it tastes like home. Diane closes her case file. Henry's first rule was never to let other people write the weather, she says. When the storm comes, you keep driving, you know your route, and you don't white-knuckle the wheel. That's how you stop the skid. I want to do more than stop, I say. My voice surprises me, steadier than I feel. I want to set terms, not just avoid blows. Then we plan a fence, Ruth says. 3 lanes, legal, narrative, and operations. Legal is mine. Narrative we handle with strict minimums and credible mouths. Diane can help with that. Operations is where you stand up and build something unmistakably yours. What does building look like, I ask. It looks like how Nora and Henry lived, Linda says softly. They never gave to make noise. They gave to make something grow. Blueprints form while we talk. A scholarship fund for skilled trades named for Henry and Nora that lives in the open, not as a private rumor. A profit-sharing bump for the seasonal drivers who still carry the Blake name in small towns that never make the news. A restoration schedule for the harbor house that hires local crews and publishes every permit and payment like a handshake. Transparency, Diane says, tapping the table. You disinfect the space so thoroughly that anyone trying to murk it up looks like what they are. Arturo updates the security protocol and adds me and Ruth as primary admins. He changes the gate code with a little flourish and a shy smile. I made it a word this time, not numbers you can shoulder surf. What word, I ask. Backbone, he says, and the smile warms into his eyes. Before bed, I climb to the small office at the far end of the second floor, the room my grandmother used when she wanted quiet. It has a window that frames the bay and a narrow desk with pencil grooves. I pull out Nora's journal and read a single line she wrote 2 years ago. Loving people doesn't mean handing them the knife. I copy it into my notebook in my own hand so I can look at it later when courage runs thin. I sleep harder than I expect and wake to a ring that slices the morning. My principal again. A morning show producer called the receptionist, he said your mother gave them this number. I shut it down. Also, I'm calling this a family emergency leave for 3 days. Use it. Put guardrails up. I thank him more times than is cool and hang up. Breakfast becomes a planning session. Ruth returns with printed orders stamped in blue. Diane brings a map of current gossip vectors complete with circles and arrows like a coach drawn to a whiteboard. Arturo lays out security updates like a general. Linda sets a basket of roses from Nora's garden at the center of the table. The room smells like summer and fresh starts. Here's the sequence, Ruth says, clicking open a doc on the big screen. 1 formal notice to return any items removed from this property within 72 hours. 2 petition to verify the will and resist challenge with supporting evidence journals, video inventory. 3 cease and desist letters to the public accounts defaming Mara by name with platform notices attached. 4 a community statement from Diane and a separate note from 2 longtime employees. No op-eds, no interviews. Our tone is steady, decent, impossible to rattle. Can I add a 5, I ask? A letter to the seasonal drivers and partner shops, not corporate, me, telling them exactly what's happening and exactly what won't change. You can and you should, Diane says. They'll read it twice and talk about it in the break room. That's how you build a spine into a story. We work until my hand aches. While Ruth drafts, I compose the letter Diane suggested. I'm Mara Quinn. I grew up eating sandwiches off your tailgates and learning which roads flood first. My grandparents built something honest, and I intend to protect that honesty with boring paperwork and stubborn kindness. Here's what's true. No embroidery, no drama. Just clear promises and a way to reach me that isn't filtered through anyone who wants a piece. Midday. Another text from an unknown number hits my phone. A selfie of Camilla outside my school captioned, "So sad to see what success does to a daughter." She tagged a local news anchor. She started the clock she thinks I'll race. I don't reply. Ruth sends the screenshot to our evidence folder and forwards the injunction. Mr. Alonso confirms the security team knows not to let her inside. A minute later, a teacher friend texts a photo of Camilla getting escorted off the lot with her mouth arranged in shock. Quiet ground winds, Diane murmurs, reading over my shoulder. The afternoon brings a visit from someone I don't expect. Marcus Hale, my grandparents' financial advisor for the past decade. He's tall and gentle-looking, with a habit of folding his hands before saying anything important. I kept my mouth shut for weeks because that's the job, he says, standing just inside the study door until Ruth nods him farther in. But Nora told me to show up if the temperature rose. The temperature rose. He opens a portfolio, shows me the scaffolding of the estate, conservative investments, stubbornly ethical funds notes in Nora's hand on every change. He points to a column no one else noticed, a contingency account labeled Cove. What's Cove, I ask. A separate trust, Marcus says. Small cottage across the bay. Nora wanted you to have a place no one could leverage. Arturo mentioned a cottage, Linda says, but he didn't have the paperwork. It's here. Marcus slides over the deed. Titled to the trust with you as trustee. Different bank, different address of record, your bunker with good light. I breathe like I haven't all day, another plank under my feet. Before Marcus leaves, he pauses at the door. Henry told me once that character is compound interest, he says. You don't notice it growing until suddenly the balance is the only thing that matters. Keep paying in. After he's gone, I take the scarf from around my neck and lay it across the chair back in Henry's study. It sits there like a small blue flag that says, "This room belongs to people who loved hard and paid attention." At 4, Ruth's phone buzzes with a court clerk's number. She listens, nods, and hangs up. The judge pushed the first hearing on the will contest to next week, she says. "Your father filed. We'll respond. In the meantime, no one touches a fork in this house without my say-so." "What about them showing up again?" I ask. "They will," Ruth says. "Next time we choose the space, neutral ground, witnesses we invite, mediation with teeth." "I want the former police chief there," I say, surprising myself with the memory of a kind man who taught me how to bait a hook when I was 9. Daniel Brooks. He'll be fair, and he knows this family from the outside. "Done," Ruth says, typing, "and we'll invite Judge Lee as a mediator, retired, sharp, impervious to performance." Evening settles soft. A film of fog blurs the far side of the bay. The house clicks and sighs as if remembering. I take one more lap through the rooms, hand on banisters that carry fingerprints older than mine eyes, on corners where dust gathers and stories hide. In Nora's sewing room, a half-finished scarf waits on needles. I slide it into a bag. I'm not ready to knit, but I'm ready to keep something going. I end the night on the back steps. The stones are cool through my jeans. The tide writes and erases itself below. I think about the girl in the funeral home counting light bulbs to put a shape around grief. I think about the woman on these steps counting allies. Arturo, Linda, Ruth, Diane, Marcus, Mr. Alonso, Mrs. Flores, names like posts in a fence. My phone lights one more text from Jasper. "You don't have to do this. Dad says you're making it worse." For the first time I reply, "I'm making it true." Dots appear, disappear, appear. He types and deletes 3 times before he gives up. I slip the phone into my pocket and let the fog weave its soft net. Tomorrow will bring calls and filings and a fresh angle of attack. But tonight there are roses by the front door and lemon loaf crumbs on a plate and a scarf warmed by my grandmother's hands generations ago. The house breathes with me. It feels like a creature that has decided to wake. We chose a quiet room at the Marina's Community Center. No chandeliers, no stage. Windows to the water, a long table, and chairs that didn't creak when people shifted. Judge May Lee retired, and Razor Sharp sat at the head. Daniel Brooks, former police chief, took a seat by the window with a small notepad and a steadiness that filled the corners. Ruth placed our files in a neat row. I folded Nora's scarf over the back of my chair and let my hands rest flat on the wood. Philip arrived, first jaw set like stone. Camilla came in with a tissue already in hand. Jasper trailed them eyes on the carpet. Diane and Marcus sat behind me, quiet ballast. Linda and Arturo waited in the hall, available if needed. We had witnesses. We had air. Judge Lee began without small talk. "This isn't a courtroom," she said, "but it is a legal conversation. One person speaks at a time. Evidence before opinion. We will finish with a written memorandum. Clear." Philip nodded like he'd tolerate it. Camilla dabbed her eyes. Jasper swallowed. Ruth slid the first exhibit across the table. "Inventory and photographs dated by Mrs. Nora Blake," she said. "Provenance for every item in the Harbor Point house." Judge Lee glanced, then passed it to Daniel. He scanned in silence. The second exhibit was a stack of loan records. Not loans requests labeled in Nora's hand. Amounts, dates, promised returns that never returned. I didn't look at Philip when Daniel read the totals. I kept my eyes on the tide moving beyond the glass. Ruth connected a laptop to the screen. "Security footage timestamped," she said. "The afternoon of the funeral." She pressed play. The room filled with soft sound footsteps, drawers, the muffled creak of a cabinet door. Camilla's face floated across the screen, careful hands wrapping silver in scarf fabric. Jasper's voice whispered values from his phone. Philip's cuff flashed as a frame left the hall wall. Camilla's tissue paused halfway to her cheek. "We were safeguarding." "No," Daniel said, calm as a tap on glass. "That's not safeguarding." Ruth clicked forward. Emails, texts, a landlord note about a forced inspection, a screen grab of the burner account smearing my name, the letter with red X's over my childhood photos. Judge Lee's mouth pressed thin. Then came Nora's journal, only the lines that mattered to this room. Her handwriting stopped the noise in my head. "Hope is sticky. Loving people doesn't mean handing them the knife. Mara listens when I'm tired, Words that didn't need a lawyer. Philip shifted in his chair. He tried his old shape. "You're dramatizing ordinary family friction," he said. "Nora and Henry were sentimental. Mara is fragile. We were protecting the legacy." "You were protecting access," I said, voice low. "You were counting before they were cold." Silence settled. It was heavy but not cruel. Judge Lee leaned forward. "Here's what I see. A valid will. A pattern of extraction, an attempted lockout, a smear campaign, a family in freefall. We can move this to court and let it grind you to chalk. Or we can settle like adults." Her gaze landed on me. "Do you have terms, Ms. Quinning?" I slid the page Ruth and I had drafted across the table. "Return of all items within 72 hours, I said. "Written acknowledgement of the will's validity, no contact orders for 1 year, a small fixed trust for each of you to break the cycle of just one more loan. If the orders are violated, the trusts vanish. If you comply, I don't press criminal charges. That is as far as my mercy stretches." Camilla's shoulders trembled. "You would cut your own mother out of your life," she whispered. "I'm refusing to be your bank or your alibi," I said. "Those were never daughter jobs." Jasper stared at the terms. "I didn't know about the landlord," he said, looking at Philip, not at me. "You used my name for the fake accounts." Philip's jaw tightened. "We used what we had." "Use your voice life-size," Judge Lee said. "Apologize when you're wrong. Accept limits, or I write a recommendation to the DA and we're done talking." Ruth set a final folder on the table. "Medical records," she said softly. Nora was evaluated by her physician 3 weeks before she signed the will. Grossly competent, oriented. She discussed the terms with her doctor. "We have the note and the audio. Any diminished capacity argument will fail." Camilla went still. The tissue fell to the table. "She never told me." "She was tired of telling you," I said. We took a break. Jasper followed me into the hallway, hands knotted. "I'm sorry," he said, words spilling fast. "I let him talk me into things because it was easier than saying no. I don't like who I am around him. I told him, you choose your ground. Return what you took and stop covering for him. If you do call me in 6 months, no sooner." He nodded, eyes wet but stubborn. We went back in and finished. Daniel drafted the return list. Judge Lee wrote a memo and made Philip read every line, pen in hand. He signed, Camilla signed, Jasper signed jaw tight. Ruth filed copies. We left with a plan, a hearing date on the will, and a mediation-backed no-contact order. No drama, just a clean ledger. Outside, Diane squeezed my shoulder. "Now, build." I looked across the bay to the little cottage cove where I'd remember why this mattered. The next day was all operations. We sent letters on time, pay no sale of the name, profit sharing up 2 points, clear lines for clients, safety upgrades for the small distributor. We held an open hour at the warehouse and set 3 changes, a safety stipend, a loaner program, and cash for time-saving route tips. Smears came, a TV hit, a fake report, a weaponized wellness check. We logged, declined, and kept working. Boxes arrived, first returns. We launched the foundation quietly and funded 3 scholarships. In court, Philip argued chaos. Ruth proved capacity. The judge upheld the will, ordered returns, warned of charges if they failed. We signed a consent order, returns, no contact, no public statements, small trusts upon compliance. The last boxes came. Philip emailed, "This isn't over." I ignored it. Jasper started volunteering. Doors closed, the work stayed open.